Today, we become legends.
Today's Titan Talk discussed god popularity, Prism pricing, social features, monotheistic figures, and more. So without further ado, let's jump into the recap. First up, someone asked if 400 diamonds is the new default price for Prisms, and Kilgoon said they're not fully decided on it yet, but what they're sort of going with right now is 400 diamonds for classic skin Prisms, and 600 diamonds for new skin Prisms, with all of the Prisms being the same price, as they kind of found that the community appreciates that. Kilgoon also mentioned that the Landshark Traveler market in terms of selling Prisms like a bundle kind of like that has performed really well, so we might see more of those in the future. Someone asked if we can get a way to direct purchase announcer packs anytime soon, and Kilgoon said probably not super soon, but they are aware that this is something the community wants. There was a question of if any monotheistic figures are completely off of the table, given that they've said before that Abrahamic figures will not come to the game due to a large portion of the player base being very against that, and Kilgoon said it's not a firm no or anything, but leaning towards no on those topics due to being potentially problematic with some players. Someone asked if there are any plans to have a main menu messaging system that works outside of the specific match you're in, and Kilgoon said he is personally a big proponent of this kind of stuff. He did say there's a lot of evidence to suggest that they maybe shouldn't bring it back, and it's also a fairly big UI task to do, when they could be focused on other things right now, like the new player experience, queue screen, etc. But he did say that he would love to have more social elements in the game in general, which I definitely agree with. The overall social experience in Smite 2 right now is very lacking. There was a question of if they are looking to improve the lighting or the skybox in Conquest, and Kilgoon said he personally thinks that lighting is one of the areas that could be improved a lot in the game, but it's not an easy thing to address. They're currently discussing what would be the most impactful thing to do in terms of art improvements for Conquest, such as the trees overhaul that they mentioned more recently, or more updates to jungle camp art, stuff like that. He did say they've been talking about lighting upgrades internally though. Someone asked if they would ever do an Ascension Pass bundle or Ultimate Pack, and Kilgoon said probably not, because it's quite hard to prevent overlap with other systems that give free Ascension Passes, like the Founders Bundles or Wandering Market tokens. For example, if they did do an Ultimate Ascension Pack, it will be very hard to make work, because for the people that have already purchased a lot of Ascension Packs, how would you really handle that? Personally, I think it would be reasonable to just reduce the cost of the purchase by a percentage based on how many you already have, but then I guess it could still feel weird if you bought those for free versus got them at full price. If you bought 20 Ascension Passes at full price, that might be like half of what the Ultimate Pack costs anyway, which might be kind of weird. I sort of see where they're coming from on this one, but I do agree that an Ultimate Pack would be cool to have access to. Someone asked for updates on the Equip All button for God Cosmetics, and Kilgoon said it is on their list of priorities, but not really near the top, as they feel there are other UI areas that will provide more overall benefit to the game, like the new queue screen that's coming soon, for example. There was a question of if they plan to rotate through all the classes when porting gods, or would they potentially add multiples of one class quickly if they felt like it was needed, and Kilgoon said it's not a hard and fast rule or anything, but they generally try and keep to that, as they don't want specific playstyles or roles to be waiting too long for a new god to play. Someone asked for their thoughts on making it so that teleporters are only active after 8 minutes or after the first Gold Fury or something, like in Smite 1, and Kilgoon said they could consider it for the side-to-side teleporters, but of course they want the base TPs to be active immediately, as that's sort of their goal in terms of being used in the early laning phase anyway. There was a question of if the commendation system would return from Smite 1, and Kilgoon said it generally didn't meet their expectations or do much of anything really. It just resulted in commendations being given if you won and not given if you lost in most cases, so it didn't really impact anything and wouldn't be worth bringing. They have explored other methods of doing a similar system though that might have better results, so if they were to add something like it, it wouldn't be exactly like Smite 1's. Someone asked how hard Camazots would be to port, and Kilgoon said not too hard really, but he is incredibly unpopular, so he likely won't be in the next few assassins that they come over. There are more popular ones that they could bring to please more players at once. There was a question of why popularity even matters for gods when they could either rework or give aspects to less popular gods to improve their popularity, and Kilgoon said that generally popularity doesn't even correlate to gameplay that much, and it more correlates with if the character looks and sounds cool, and that's why people try them in the first place, which I thought was interesting. I know that for me personally, gameplay matters a lot. My first impression might be based on how cool they look and whether I try them or not, but if a god looks insanely cool but plays like ass, I'm gonna play them for one game and never again, personally. Bakekujira is a good example of that. Looks awesome, plays like nails on a chalkboard, and I'm not gonna play him again. Someone asked if they could do base skin recolors as prisms, and Kilgoon said they definitely could do that, and he thinks it's a good idea, but no firm ETA on that. There was a question on if they could add class tags back to Smite 2, and Kilgoon said he understands where people are coming from with that, and the community still sort of uses those tags regularly to refer to a god's playstyle, but they didn't want to make the game appear to be forcing you into a certain role because of your class, since Smite 2 is trying to focus more on diversity and role flexibility. Someone asked if they could show gods in their aspect role with an icon to tell players that the aspects version specifically is viable in that role, and Kilgun said it is on their to-do list but no ETA, and they're a little unsure on how exactly to convey that to players at the moment. There was a question of if they considered Mana Chalice or 3k pots for other stats like protections or attack speed, and Kilgun said he doesn't think Mana Chalice is really necessary at the moment, as most gods aren't as mana constrained in Smite 2 as they were in Smite 1. And as for different 3k pots, they intend for those to force the game to end at a certain point because of how much damage is being thrown around, so they might not want to add protections, as that could prolong games by everyone stacking prot pots and being unkillable, but they would be more open to other offensive stats like attack speed or cooldown 3k pots, which sounds interesting. And finally, someone asked if changing scaling types with an aspect is on the table, and Kilgun said they are open to it, but would probably need to be more than just changing their scaling for an aspect. The scaling change would likely be part of some larger changes that the aspect would bring. But that's everything discussed on today's Titan Talk. Don't forget to drop a like before you leave and subscribe so you don't miss my future recaps, and I'll catch you guys for another one later on. Have a great day, and peace out, you nerds.